Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yesterday, we showed this video clip of Harare City Council demolishing houses in Belvedere, one of the suburbs in that city. We pointed three things. The first one is that the city council was demolishing these houses. They did not go up overnight. Most of these houses were probably built in the last year or more. The city council saw the buildings go up. They did not stop the work. And now they finally decided to demolish it, to demolish the houses. They didn't even have the decency of telling the people to recover the building materials. They could. They just came and demolished the buildings. Most of the people who were interviewed were saying they only were given enough time to take out their personal belongings from the houses, and the houses were demolished. Number two, the city council says the houses were built on land that was allocated by land barons without the council's permission. How was the individual to know who has the right to sell the land? So by demolishing these houses, the city council are punishing the victims of the land barons. Because make no mistake about it, the land barons themselves made a pretty penny from selling the land. And as far as I know, none of these land barons have ever been arrested or punished in any way. So the city council are victimizing the victims. The third point is that most of these people who are building houses in the urban centers is because they cannot build homes, a decent home in their own rural areas, because Zanu PF has never given title deeds to people in the rural area. This is a carryover from the colonial days. Ian Smith was advised by the economist and a banker, the late John Robertson, that if he granted the rural people title deeds, they'll be able to build themselves decent homes and improve make improvement on the piece of land, growing fruit trees, planting or digging wells so that there is clean water, because they will know whatever improvements they make on that piece of land, at the end of the day, they can sell it to somebody else and recover some of their expenses. Ian Smith said no for political reasons. He did not want to give the blacks a foot on the economic ladder, because the next thing they'll be asking for, the reason, will be political rights. Zanu PF was given the same plan after independence, and Mugabe rejected it for the same selfish political reasons. This is the nightmare that Zimbabwe is facing. Zanu PF has never, ever wanted to give the people of Zimbabwe a meaningful say in the governance of the country, for political reasons. And after 44 years of gross mismanagement, rampant corruption, and with the economy in total meltdown, that fear has turned to paranoia. Zanu PF is determined to hang on to power at all costs. Welcome to you, Benjamin.
Good day. Thank you for having me on the program. You know, I just got one word to summarize this whole development that is happening in Zimbabwe. It's corruption. Why am I saying corruption? Look, when you are building a house, you just don't build, from foundation to roofing without consulting the city council or without having council approve each stage of the building process, you know, which means council must have approved at some point, you know, on each and every stage at least, unless somebody got paid to cover it up. And then when you look at it, I firmly believe, who are the land barons? The Zanu PF members. They are the land barons. They are the ones that are selling this land illegally to people, only to turn around the very next day and say, no, 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 you know, this land was never meant to be sold in the first place. But then you ask, like rightfully you asked a question to say, then why don't you arrest the guy that is the main culprit, the guy that sold the land illegally? Because only one person is suffering from this whole transaction, which is, the person that bought the building or that bought the piece of land. Why are you not arresting or going after, the root of the problem? No land, developer or land baron has ever been arrested. It's all corruption at the end of the day within government, within, Zanu PF, to be frank. It's really sickening and pathetic that they keep going this same route. And it's not the first time this has happened. This happened on numerous occasions. Somebody's hard-earned money has been used thinking that they have finally secured themselves a home, only to be, to watch it go down, you know, within minutes being leveled. It's really, really sad, and it's quite pathetic, and heartless from this regime.
Well, this was Mnangagwa's reaction to these demolitions.
Kunana sababu hakubheva samameya sorel ukangovaka chivake vake tinati chingoputsa chiputse-putse.
The sheer contemptuous disregard of others' rights to have ownership is what is amazing here. These people are going to the rural areas, and they're, like he is admitting there, the Zanu PF officials are telling them, yes, you can have this piece of land and you can build your home. And invariably, the regime comes along and say, no, they should have given you that land. And they demolish your home. You go to the urban centers, the same thing. The truth of the matter is, we have a regime that honestly does not care about the ordinary Zimbabwean. As much as people don't want to admit it, the truth of the matter is this Zanu PF regime is determined to keep the rural people and now the urban dwellers as well poor. They want everybody, the majority of the people, to remain subservient. And this will allow them to have access, political power and control over the people. Here is Margaret Dongo remarking on that very same subject.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for Zanu PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor, because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because at the moment, if you economically empower these people, they'll go out of hand. Zanu PF will never have control over them.
The poor are being kept poor deliberately for political reasons. Are you still there, Ben?
Yes. Sorry. I mean, I agree with what she has said. It's turned into towards the areas as well. I mean, I know of places, a lot of places within urban areas that still people are building, but they do not have any title deeds, and they are very, very much at risk. You look at areas like Rua, that area has been developed over years, and none, if maybe a few, but none, have any title deeds to their homes. Nobody. So they are subject, to removal at any point that they go against, ZANU PF. This is what they want. And believe me, this same land, destroying this, Harare has been demolished, and you find that they have sold it again, and then they do. It's like now a vicious cycle, of just taking advantage of people. And funny enough, you find this government is always saying, develop our country, invest in this country. How do you invest in a place like this, where there is no rule of law, where any day you can just lose you out on your property? Houses are not very, cheap to build, and it's very strenuous, even on the body and mind, until you get a full-fledged home. And then overnight, within 2-3 hours, everything is leveled all to the ground. That's unfair. That's very, very unfair. And then the president, who is supposed to be the leader of the people, claims that we will just destroy if you build. Why don't you say we will destroy and arrest? He never mentioned anything about arrests, because it is him and his children that are involved. His children are, you know, I'm talking of everybody within Zanu PF. They are his children, right? They are the land barons. They are the ones that are duping people out of their own money. Arrest them. Arrest yourself as well. It's really, really sad that Zimbabweans now have been put on a tight leash, that you cannot sprout, you cannot grow, lest you end up having wings and flying away from Zanu PF. They want to keep you dependent within their system. Don't grow. Remain small. Remain under them. Very, very unfair. And this just blows that whole Zimbabwe is open for business, nonsense that the president was talking about in 2017. That was all just nonsense. This is what he is really about: duping people out of their hard-earned money and flying away with it.
Yeah, the real tragedy here is that until we have meaningful political change in Zimbabwe, nothing will change. As we can see, Zanu PF has never held free, fair, and credible elections since the country's independence in 1980. And now, 44 years down the line, the regime is realizing that telling people that it has got the ability to improve their lives is becoming a lie that everyone can see. And so the regime has got to find other ways of retaining power and is using brute force. Zanu PF is never going to give up power. Zanu PF is never going to hold free, fair, and credible elections. And at the present moment, we have the misfortune that when the country had the opportunity to implement the reforms to end the Zanu PF dictatorship, that opportunity was wasted. And Zanu PF now, instead of having an opposition that is committed to implementing reforms, it is an opposition that is committed to helping Zanu PF stay in power. Whether we like to admit it or not, the truth of the matter is MDC Triple C are never going to implement any reforms to make sure there are free, fair, and credible elections. All they will be doing now is participating in flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy. We saw this happen last year, and it's certain that it's going to happen again in 2028. The only hope of breaking this mold is making sure that we persuade the so-called Chamisa Chete Chete Brigade to stop participating in these flawed elections. Because Zanu PF is not doing it, and Chamisa and company are quite content to participate for a share of the spoils of power. The fight to end the Zanu PF dictatorship is entering an even more dangerous phase. The regime is going to use to do everything in its power to hang on to power. I've shown the picture of Zimbabwe in 1980 and Zimbabwe in 2023. The difference is stunning. The country's economy is in total meltdown. This illusion that somehow Zanu PF is going to successfully retain the country to be an upper middle income nation in 2030 is just a mirage. Zanu PF is beginning to realize it itself. And this is why it's resorting to all manner of dirty tricks to stay in power no matter what. We need, as Zimbabweans, to be smart enough to realize that this fight, the fight for a meaningful say in the governance of the country, is not going to be an easy one. And those who think or believe that Chamisa and company can still win rigged elections are the case to the nation. Because if you participate in a flawed elections, you only give Zanu PF legitimacy. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
So yes, in closing, it was on another platform where one of Chamisa's sympathizers said, let us wait and see what will happen in 2028. And my answer was, look, you said the same thing. Let us wait and see what will happen in 2023. We cannot afford to mess up in 2028. Zanu PF will rig those elections. And we know that full well. Look, we cannot then think, was the moment we participate in 2028, let's start thinking about 2033. That's almost 10 years from now, under this regime, or even worse, because we will have new characters that will have, their own dealings, and they will want to line their pockets. We cannot afford to be doing this. SADC, the EU, they gave us a task. The task was to implement the recommendations or the reforms that are needed for us to have free, fair, and credible elections. Let us fight for that first. Then whoever, if Chamisa wants to come in and have, elections, by God's grace, let him come through. We need as many people as possible to choose from, as long as those elections are free, fair, and credible. Otherwise, we will be stuck with Zanu PF, and they will keep doing to us the same thing that they are doing now, or even worse. The moment we fail to grasp that, we have lost it, and we keep losing it. So my to end it, I would say, let's put our house in order. Let's fix what needs to be fixed first. Then we have free, fair, and credible elections. If Chamisa wins, that is marvelous, as long as it is free, fair, and credible elections, such that even if he turns out to be the guy that we don't want him to be, we can easily remove and put another guy, than to have another Zanu PF all over again, and to have this same Zanu PF for the next 10 years. Seriously, give it thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. So the closing remark is Zanu PF has never wanted Zimbabweans to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. Since back in 1980, because they feared that they may lose power if the elections are free, fair, and credible. After 44 years of gross mismanagement, rampant corruption, and tyrannical rule, that fear has turned to paranoia because the regime now knows that the people are so desperate for change, they will never win free, fair, and credible elections. So the regime is retaining power by hook or by crook. And one of the ways to do it is to keep everybody poor. The regime has kept the rural people impoverished, but they've also kept the urban poor. If you look at the sorry state of Zimbabwe in 1980 to what it has become now, the difference is just stunning. This is what Zanu PF fears. They know that people can see for themselves that the country is going nowhere. The fight to end the Zanu PF dictatorship has got to be at a totally different level because the regime itself is determined to stay in power at all costs. Thank you very much, Ben. And for those who were able to join us tonight, have a good evening.